All right, we are going to move right along with Joey Logano, driver of the number 22 Shell Pennzoil Ford, and we will open the floor for media questions. Please raise your hand if you have a question for Joey. Wait for the wireless mic. We'll start with Dustin over here on the right.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. Joey, obviously a lot of talk about this race, new event, something new, something different for the sport. But when the sport gets through this weekend, what are the things that need to be looked at to see if something like this was a good idea, was something that can be used elsewhere, or just the idea of it, maybe not the same thing, be used? I mean, what are the things people need to look at in terms of moving forward with this event after it's over?
Well, I think this, as far as the hype and the talk around the Roval, I think from a marketing standpoint, it's already been a win. From that standpoint, we honestly would not be talking about Charlotte so much if it wasn't the Roval, because we're all concerned on what it's going to be. Now, that's just hype. Now, the answer to how whether it's a success or not will be after the race, and depending on what we thought was good racing, and everyone's definition of good racing sometimes is different. So I think, if we give ourselves a couple weeks afterwards and we understand what was good and what wasn't, and as open as the track seems to be as far as, making adjustments to the track and how many times they've adjusted the layout of the racetrack. They got maps up here for us to look at, which is kind of funny. But, I think as they've changed it a lot throughout testing, maybe after the race they'll see something that can be improved and adjust that. Or I guess, there's always the opportunity, if it doesn't work, you can just punt and go back to what we were doing, which wasn't so bad either. So, I think it's cool. We're trying something different. Do we know it's going to work? No, we don't know that. I'm going to be as excited as anybody else to watch this Xfinity race and see how that's going to go, and figure out where the passing zones are, how restarts are going to be. I think that's what's probably got everyone the most nervous, is how these restarts are going to be. There's a lot of areas on this racetrack that are pretty slick. There's a lot of areas that if you get out of control, you will hit something, and cars will bounce back out in front of you and block the whole racetrack. So there is an opportunity for chaos like that. But that being said, I think everybody realizes that and may give each other more room. Some drivers have nothing to lose. Some have a lot to lose. And so there's a lot of different agendas out there for drivers. But, I think at the end of the day, to answer your question, whether it's going to be a success or not, I think is probably up to everyone's opinion at the end of the day, and what race fans think, what the drivers think, ultimately what you guys think. I think it's all going to have to come down to each party, and just figure out what we got to do to make it better. If it's not great, and if it is, hey, we tried something. So I'm excited about it. I think it'll be interesting. I think the craziest piece is that it's in the playoffs. I think everyone agrees with that's a little bit crazy, but it's the same for everybody.
Go to the back of the room.
Doug Turnbull from Performance Racing Network. This may be a tough one to answer because you haven't been out there next to other cars, but is there a corner or a section of the track that you think is the most treacherous or worries you the most? And also, has there been any kind of simulation you could go through as a driver? I just saw they only recently released the iRacing format of it.
We've been working a lot on the Ford simulator, and trying to, figure out what we can. I've had one test here, and we made as many laps as we can and making as many adjustments as you can. But that's all we have for our notebook. Is what our teammates were able to do when they tested here, what we were able to do when we were here, and then trying to plug that data into all our sim tools to be able to be better on that. So is there a corner that I think is going to be the craziest? I only look at my map over here. So there's a lot of them, and they got them numbered for me up here, which is good because I can't remember all the turns. There's 17 of these things. That's a lot. There's a lot of turns. To me, probably what stands out the most is I guess turns 11 and 12, the bus stop, whatever you want to call it, down the back straightaway. There's that little turn thing down there with a lot of curbs. That to me is gonna probably make me the most nervous. There's no room to go too wide. You're gonna kind of be off cambered as you're going down into that curb. And then there's a big tire barrier on the exit, and that's going to destroy some cars, in my opinion. So we are going to have to be pretty careful getting through that piece. That and those curbs are big. You know, they're big curbs. They possibly could tear up tires. Steel curbs like that and the lips that are there. We've seen some issues with testing on that. I think Goodyear's changed the tire and hopefully have fixed that problem. It didn't seem like anyone had many problems yesterday in Xfinity practice with that. So I think we've made a fix that problem. But I think that that piece there, when you're going too wide into that corner, someone's going to have to give. So it's kind of a game of chicken as you're breaking down into that corner because too wide is going to be pretty tight through there, and there's no room for error. You got a wall on one side and you got a big tire barrier on the other. If you think of a similar turn like the bus stop at Watkins Glen, you think of the runoff that's there. You have this big paved area out in the open there before the wall, and then on the exit you have a lot of grass. And think about how many cars drive through the grass on restarts there. There's no grass. There's just items to hit. So we just got to be careful getting through there, and I think that's probably going to be Calamity Corner if I had to pick one. But turn one scares me too. So we'll see. Hopefully I'm in front of it.
Jerry and Hill.
Jerry Jordan, KickingTheTires.net, Performance Racing Network. You pointed out there's 17 turns. How do you tell your crew chief, hey, I'm tight here in this turn by the campers or what?
That's so when I started, I was like, turns 3 and 4, I go, by the motorhome lot, that's where we used to park the buses. I used to say that, but I've kind of learned most of the turns. I think everyone's probably going to have their own lingo. I call it NASCAR 1 and 2 and NASCAR 3 and 4 when we get onto the racetrack. And I call it the last little chicane. I think everyone has their lingo. The good things we've talked about enough to kind of know, with Todd and I, what our lingo is going to be. I think I actually have the infield numbers right. But when I get onto the racetrack, it gets so confusing. 9 and 10 on the racetrack, that's one turn. I don't know. There's just a lot. 15, 16, 17 at the end. Holy cow. That's like 2 turns to me. So it gets really confusing when it gets to those pieces. So I think we kind of have our lingo. I call it the bus stop in the back. I don't know what they want to call it, an inner loop or whatever they call it. But what is there, a heartburn turn or something turn I see 1. Now? Yeah. Heart attack turn, something. That's there. What else you got for fun names for turns? Is there more?
I think we're counting on you to come up with them.
I'm hoping not. I hope I'm not the one that comes up with the names of these things. So, but there is a lot of unknowns for us, and like you said, the names of the turns will be interesting. How we number and what we call them, and everyone will have their own lingo. But that's just one of the small pieces we'll have to figure out here today.
Hill Overton, WIXC Radio. Joey, looking at the track still. We're utilizing about 98% of the traditional track here because you go in at turn 1 and you come back out to get back on climbing
turn
up
1.
The banking to get back on 1.
That's turn 9 now.
And 2 chicanes. What is, in your opinion, where would you be going the fastest? What will it be headed toward the chicane down at 3? Going into 3? Headed
down the back straightaway into what they have here is number 11.
Yeah.
That's going to be your fastest point. After that, you can get wide open out of the bus stop and be pretty much wide open through NASCAR 3 and 4 or 13 and 14, whatever you want to call it. But you won't have the same amount of speed as you will because you get off of turn 8 and you're wide open all the way through 9 and 10 down that back straightaway. You're getting a good amount of speed there. And then you got to check up a fair amount to go through 11 and 12. Thank you for putting this map up here because I've been staring at it for these numbers, so this is good.
Well, how difficult is it going to be to get slowed down enough for that chicane going into 3? You think that's going to be a really tough thing to get G-awed enough to get in there?
Yeah, the thing is, like I said, there's not much room for error, but there's such a reward in speed there. We saw in the test that there is a big chunk of speed that happens through that bus stop. Same thing as Watkins Glen. You can gain a little 10th here, 10th there, and each turn is kind of small. You can gain or lose a half a second through the bus stop, or 11 and 12 here. So it's a similar thing to Watkins Glen. There's a lot of speed there if you can get through it, but there's way more risk pushing it through there than there is at Watkins Glen because of the things that you can hit and ultimately ruin your day. And we're not one of those 4 cars that are pretty much locked in that don't have anything to worry about, or the cars that aren't in the playoffs have nothing to worry about. We got to be smart about how we run this race all the way through it. So, when I think of corners like that, those ones stick out in my mind.
All right, we're going to come over here to Nate, Kenny, and then Al.
Nate Ryan, ABC Sports. Joey, what you were saying about the playoffs, when Talladega was the cutoff race, I think there was a general sense of that perhaps it wasn't fair. And there seems to be a lot of goodwill so far with drivers toward this event. But come Sunday after that race, do you think some of the guys who get eliminated will maybe change their tune and have that same feeling as they did after Talladega maybe?
Oh, yeah. There will be a driver that gets crashed out that's going to be angry at the Infield Care Center, is going to, mouth off and say something about the Roval. And I think it's important for all of us to understand his perspective at that point. When you get, it's the same thing at super speedways. You talk to the guy that won the race, and I love super speedway racing, it's great. And you talk to the guy, it's the half of them that got crashed out, you say, oh, this stinks. And it just depends on what's going on and how there's this much on the line, and it has the opportunity for you can control most of your destiny, but there's a chance that, like I said, I mean, you get through turn 1 on a restart and something happens on that little chute, that funnel that goes to turn 2, it's going to lock up the whole field, and you might not be able to avoid that. So that's going to be a situation that, someone's going to get angry about and want to have changed or fixed or say that this may not be the right thing. And they may be right, they may be wrong. It's just everyone's going to have a different perspective at the end of this thing. The guy that wins is going to say it's the greatest thing ever, and they love it, right? And then the drivers that miss the playoffs and go into the next round are not going to like it. That's why I said it's going to take a lot of different opinions at the end of this to understand whether this is a success or not. And all of us may not agree whether it is or not.
And then just to follow up on restarts, so they're doing it differently, obviously, and skipping the chicane. Is there just a general understanding that that's just what has to be done given the circumstances?
Yeah, I mean, you look at those last 2 turns right before, like all the other road courses, Sonoma, you have turn 11, but it's a long ways down that all the cars are straight on a straightaway, pretty much besides that little kink. When they go green. Watkins Glen, turn 11 there is, way back that all the cars are pretty much straight. This really, if you had a restart zone right after turn 17, you're going to have half the cars still in the chicane and, bumping into each other, coming to take the green. It would not work. So having that, that last chicane opened up for restarts is a good move because all of us will be a little bit more situated. Now the piece that's going to be different is we'll be going faster into turn 1 on restarts than we will be under green, because we should be able to accelerate earlier in that restart zone, and you're already coming out of 17 at a slow speed, so that amount of speed you're carrying into 1 is going to be quicker, and you're going to have cars all around you. And it's a really, really slick corner. I can't tell you enough how slick the front straightaway is here. I don't know why, but there's parts of this racetrack that grip up, and you're like, wow, that's got a lot of grip. And then there's other spots that are just like, whoa, you got nothing. And turn 1 to me is one of those slick corners. We see a lot of cars crash there in a test. It's a corner that looks like you can drive in way harder than what you do. But when you realize how much grip is in that straightaway, there's not much, and that's why everyone's been wadding them up over there.
All right, we're going to actually go up to the press box for a question before we come back down to Kenny. Question in the press box.
Sorry, the mic wasn't on. Joey, how much tomorrow will you be an observer during the Xfinity Series race? Will you hop on a golf cart and maybe go around to the different turns and see what you can learn as a spectator rather than a competitor?
Yeah, I think everyone's going to have their eyes wide open watching that race, trying to figure out what's going on. My plan is to go to roof and watch. Somewhere up there that I can get a good view of everything that's happening, see passing zones, see things, and then probably rewatch it afterwards, and just trying to understand, where the the crash spots are, where the passing zones are, how restarts go, how strategy is going to be. It's new for everybody, so if you're the first one to figure something out, you're going to have a huge advantage. Those advantages only last for one race most of the time. So, anything you can do to try to figure something out, it would be huge. If we all had the opportunity, we'd be racing this Xfinity race if we could. Obviously, we can't. So the best thing we can do after that is just watching it. And I'm glad we're not the first race. I'm glad we have someone else to watch first and see. Well, hopefully learn from a lot of their mistakes.
All right, we'll come back down to Kenny.
Kenny Bruce with KennyBruce.net. Joey, because of the limited number of passing zones, as far as we know, is that going to mean that qualifying is going to be more important than it usually would be here?
Yes. To answer your question, yes. Not only the limited amount of passing zones that there may or may not be. There may be more than you think as far as passing zones, but as far as just putting yourself in a better spot, the further back you are, the better chance you have of getting caught up in a crash, whether it's another car spinning out, a car checking up in front of you. I think at turn one on these restarts and how early it's going to check up. Think about Sonoma when we go up the hill and we get to turn two there and how slow everyone on the inside lane just gets stacked up. That's going to happen in turn one, same way. And if you don't check up in time, you're going to hit the car in front of you, and the car doesn't check up behind you, he's going to hit you. So there's going to be that chain reaction. The further back you are, the more abrupt that chain reaction is. Just like down the highway, you see 1, 2, all of a sudden there's 15 cars that hit each other. When there's a traffic jam, it's going to be the same thing. So the further you are towards the front of that thing, the better chance you have of getting through it. So qualifying becomes very important for that reason. Okay,
and because this is the only race of this type, what do you feel like you guys have to come out of here with? I mean, it's not like it's a mile and a half and you're going to more mile and a halves later on down the road. You're not going to run on something like this again until potentially next year. What are you looking to learn here this weekend?
Looking to learn and looking to do is two different things. Obviously we want to learn as much as we can and try to make our car as fast as possible. But the goal is to get through this round. We have 25 points. We're fifth in points. It's an okay spot, but it's not a comfortable spot. It's more comfortable than most. But if something happens early in the race, all of a sudden we're ones looking out. So we need to keep that in mind throughout this race and understand what we need to do to get through. And I think that's the most important piece. The good news is there's plenty of other people in that situation and in worse situations. So, it's one lap at a time for us and be smart. Our goal is always to win the race, but the goal in this race might be more just to make sure we get through the next round, because the ultimate goal at the end of the day is to win the championship. That's what we really need to do. So, to do that, we got to get through this round, and we've built ourselves an okay cushion, but I don't think you feel comfortable with that when you line up at a racetrack that there's so many unknowns. So the goals are a little bit different, and looking to learn. Obviously, we're just looking, for practice and stuff. We're probably looking to learn as much as possible and trying to find speed. And our car was good at the test through the infield piece, 1 through 8, and I felt like we lacked some speed from 9 to 15. So, there's going to be cars that are fast in one spot and not in others, so trying to balance all that.
Okay, go ahead.
Michelle Martinelli, USA Today Sports. Do you like that this is the first time you're on this course in a playoff race, or do you wish that maybe this came earlier in the season, you got another opportunity to take a stab at it?
I think everyone would rather it not be in the playoffs, honestly, but like I said, it is the same for everybody. I think there's just so much on the line, and it being the playoffs is a very aggressive move. But like I said, it's the same for everyone. We all have the same opportunity to figure this thing out first. We all have the same opportunity to get through this race. The risk piece of it from a race team side becomes a little greater, because it's not just one race. And if you don't have a good race during the regular season, it hurts your chances for a championship, obviously, because everything's tied together now. But it doesn't have as large of an effect as it is when it's in the playoffs like this weekend is.
We only have time for a couple more. We're going to go Tyler and then end with Weaver.
Tyler Burnett, Motor Racing Network. Kenny mentioned how this place, it's nothing else like it in the playoffs, so you're not going to learn much. Are you confident in the speed that you guys have at some of these tracks coming up, especially knowing your teammate has been so good, and have you learned some things from them?
I believe our confidence is growing for sure as a race team. You see, not just Brad, but our team, Blaney's team. We've been able to close that gap a little bit on that big three that we've talked about all season about. The gap is closed some. That being said, they're still really strong, and we're not where we want to be yet. So we got to keep forcing forward and trying to do that. Right now, I feel like our speed is probably right on the edge of being one of those championship four. We need to be better than where we are right now to be considered in I think in that four. But so many things happen so quickly throughout these next few weeks, and the way a lot of race teams develop their cars and find something that gets applied to their cars so quickly these days that it can change from race to race. So. I feel like we're closer than we've been in the last year and a half. So that gives me some confidence for sure. So like I said, if we get through this race and get to the next round and then kind of have that reset, get through the next couple races and see where we're at. So, we have this wild card. We have Talladega that we know is a wild card. It's been a great racetrack for us in the past and being able to win there this year. So we feel confident with that, but it's also a racetrack. It's kind of a 50-50 thing, right? So you have that one as well we got to get through. So I feel like our speed on the normal racetracks is about 5th to 8th, sometimes a little better than that recently, maybe 3rd to 8th, depending on the weekend. So I feel like we've made some good progress there. So with the right circumstances, we can win a lot of races. We just got to get maybe just a little bit quicker.
Last question.
Matt Weaver, Auto Week. I actually have kind of a off-topic, kind of geeky question for you. This is the 50th anniversary of Hot Wheels. I'm curious, did you have any memories of Hot Wheels? What was your favorite car?
I did not know that. Obviously just like most other kids that are into cars, I had a bunch of Hot Wheels that had raced down the hallway all the time growing up. But one of the coolest things that recently happened is one of the designers for Hot Wheels happens to be from near my hometown in Connecticut, and I did not get to meet him, but he sent me a drawing of the 22 race car, my race car, and in kind of a Hot Wheels form. Like, it looks cool with the big motor coming out of the hood and all that, and sent me a nice letter about it saying how we were from the same place. I thought that was pretty cool. So I think they had something just down the road from here recently, maybe a couple months ago, with Hot Wheels. So I think every kid was always excited when, that was, like, to me, one of the coolest Christmas gifts. You Hot Wheels, and you race them and see which ones are the fastest. That's what I always did. Yep.
All right. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, guys.